la famille.
So, everyone, I would love to welcome on stage an incredible young woman. She is the co-founder and CEO of ultimate.ai, and I'm very excited for her to come and share her experience with us on stage. So please give her a warm applause. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
For those who don't know what Ultimate AI is, could you maybe tell us a bit beforehand?
Yeah, so Ultimate AI, we're an AI company. We're from Finland, so headquartered in Helsinki, now also in Berlin. And we basically build AI that helps companies scale their customer service.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So before you joined tech and the whole very exciting startup world, you worked in investment banking, which is quite a male-dominated environment. How did you deal in that surrounding, or were you consciously thinking about your reactions, your position?
Yeah, so it was my first job. So you are obviously at your most insecure and inexperienced. It is very male-dominated, so you're also hyper-aware that you're a woman. But I think when you're in such a high-pressured environment with really, really high expectations, you kind of have no choice. You just have to perform. So, and I think, I mean, we talked a lot in the previous talk about leadership, and it's a very, very similar thing. Like, you have no choice. You have people that rely on you to do something, and you have a team that relies on you, or people that rely on you to make decisions. And even if you feel self-doubt or self-conscious, you have no choice but to perform. And I think when you throw yourself into those sorts of situations, that's the best way to learn how to be a leader. Yeah, woman or not, yeah.
And you told me when we chatted before that the toughest decision that you ever made career-wise was deciding to leave investment banking, which was, I guess, a secure job that everybody could understand, and join tech because most of your close surrounding didn't understand it or didn't support it.
Yeah, so investment banking is a very closed community. It's a very tough industry to break into. Whether you're a woman or not, again, so it's a very tough industry to break into. And once you're in, and you're working very, very hard, you're not encouraged to, let's say, quit your job cold turkey and try and figure something out. You know, something interesting, something like startups, which sounds so vague and so uncertain. Investment banking is very certain. So yeah, so that was really scary. That was a big risk that I took, because up to that point in my life, I'd always achieved according to very clear criteria. So, you know, grades in school, or getting an internship, or getting a really good job, and then succeeding in that job. It's always very straightforward. So when you quit your job and try and figure out what you want to do, there's no metrics for that. So that was the hardest thing, yeah, career-wise, that I've ever done.
How did you deal with self-doubt in that situation? I mean, it's not easy when you have your whole close surrounding telling you that's not a good idea, or that's not something that is a smart decision to do.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you deal with it. One thing definitely is that you fake it until you make it. So you go to events like this. I mean, I did the exact same thing. I was in your shoes. I did even more than this. And you hear people speak, and then you mimic the language that they use next time you speak to somebody else. And it sounds like you're in. Suddenly you're in. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I would say faking it until you make it. Surround yourself with good people who are confident in you. And then, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you have no choice. If you're ambitious and you want to get somewhere, you kind of just have to force yourself into those situations, and then you can be nervous, you know, like outside. Yeah.
So since we are talking about ambition, do you regard yourself as ambitious?
Yes, definitely.
Where do you think that ambition comes from?
It's hard to say when you've always been a certain way and it's such a core part of your personality. I know that when we spoke on the phone, I had a more interesting answer to this. I would say if there's a lot of different things, but it's always your family and your upbringing. For me personally, my parents were immigrants to the UK, so they're Iraqi Iranian, And they had a lot, and then they didn't have anything, and then they had to make everything from scratch. So I think when you grow up in an environment where you're very much aware that you can make anything, but you have to make it from scratch, and it's all due to your hard work, and you can really like make your place in society all by yourself, then I think that can give you a certain sense of strength or a certain foundation that makes you push yourself.
So on the one hand, it was your parents.
Yeah.
And then the second thing you've told me is that you were part of a girls' school, an environment where I suppose sciences and math and economics and things like that weren't as encouraged, or tech as well. We chatted quite a bit on this. So how did you figure out that you wanted to go in a business direction from coming from an environment that didn't maybe encourage that path?
So this was actually a downfall to my education. So in the UK, going to girls only or boys only school is super common. Like loads of people go to single sex schools up until the age of 18, which is what I did, which is totally normal. But single sex schools are great, but they do. You do study subjects that might be more traditional to your gender. So obviously you study maths and science, and economics was even on the table, but you definitely don't study technology. And I can guarantee you, every single person that came out of that school or any of our sister schools, and myself included, will not have any sort of background in technology, which means that you can't go to university for technology, which means that suddenly you're locked out of this really exciting industry. And I would say that there's a lot of gatekeepers out there that say that you can't break in, or you can't found something, or you can't whatever if you don't have a technical background, and that's not true. Like you still learn after school. Yeah.
So how did you find your way towards business from there?
Honestly, like I said, I faked it till I made it. So I went to loads of events. I made friends with founders. I did this. I mean, one thing which was really cool was I got this scholarship through this thing called Code First Girls in London, where I learnt to code at Twitter. So Twitter's office was like a 10-minute walk from my office in London. So I used to like sneak out at 6:30, do like these really intensive coding things with all the Twitter engineers, and then like run back at 8:30 to finish my work. But anyway, when you immerse yourself in that and you start to build a network in that space, it's more organic. People start introducing you to things, you meet people organically, and then you just learn about an industry and suddenly you're part of it.
But at the end of the day, it's you personally that has to go out there and figure it out and try it out to know where you can go. And
yeah. Yeah, totally.
So after deciding to get out of investment banking and joining in the tech industry, you met couple of very interesting guys that at the certain point where you decided to join them were 7 developers sitting in one room.
So when I joined Ultimate, it was like just a technical team. So there were 3 original like co-founders. They all grew up in the same small town in Finland. I always make fun of Finland for having small towns, but like it's fine. It's probably not that small, but it's called Jyväskylä. It's like in the center of Finland. They grew up together from kindergarten. They went to the same technical university, and then they built something, and it worked really well. And they had like quite a lot of big name clients, inexplicably almost. But they were a pure technical team. Like they were 7 guys sitting in this office in Tampere with no like. When you can sense that there's this huge gap of capability in terms of whatever it is that I do as COO, whether it's like marketing or creating the brand or like recruiting or positioning yourself versus competitors or fundraising, you can just tell that you add value. So I got very lucky, with the team that I joined, and the fact that they were so open as well to the contribution that I could make very early on. Yeah.
So what attracted you to join 7 geeky guys?
The founders, the founders, they are very open. So when you're joining a very early company, it's hard because to find the right team for you, team is super important. When it's just a few people in a room and you're going to be working together like crazy to build a company out of nothing, it's really important that the people, you trust each other, you can rely on each other, and that you think everybody is super smart. Like, you all think that you're very lucky to be in this room with such incredible people. So yeah, when you meet people like that and you can see how open they are to working with you, yeah, like, you have to take that opportunity.
You guys are growing quite well right now,
Yeah.
and you raised a substantial seed round that is going to bring you now to the next stage. You were part of the fundraising and the discussions. What were the obstacles that you encountered during the process?
With fundraising, I mean, the first obstacle that we encountered was our lack of organization. So yeah, you learn how to do these things. So yeah, that was the first obstacle. The second obstacle was you get better at telling your story the more often people ask. So by the end of it, you're like a pro. Like, you are absolutely incredible. You know the answer to everything. You have all the right documents, as in you're just miles ahead of you a month ago. So as long as you haven't started with your best VCs right at the beginning and then burnt them, yeah, that's it. That will work out. Basically, just keep going at it.
As much as you need to make sure that VCs are attracted to your idea and convince them to invest, you also need to take a look at them, because it's a long-term relationship that you're building. What was for you guys important to look at when you approached VCs?
Yeah, there's multiple things. Do they, like, can they work with you? Because when you're accepting people at the seed stage, and you're really, you know, they can sometimes be on your board, or you'll work very closely with them, their opinions matter. You have to be sure that you can work with them, that they'll be with you in good times and bad times, that you have the trust. And then you have all the obvious ones. Do they have deep pockets? Do they have lots of really cool other portfolio companies that you could partner with or sell to? Are they in the right geography for you? So are they close to where you are? There's no point raising from like a French VC if you're not in France, or like have an ambition to go there. So yeah, that's multiple different things. Yeah.
So you are part of a company from the start up, let's say. So you're now in the position where you have to build relationships, build communities in one way or the other. Have you personally experienced gender bias in any of the cases that you've encountered with ultimate.ai?
Yes, of course, everybody experiences gender bias. You can't even tell. Okay, so half the gender bias is probably there. But half the gender bias might even be in your head. As in, you might be hyper aware that you are a woman going into the meet, the only woman. You might be hyper aware that you're young. You might be hyper aware that you have really long hair and it like is getting in your face and you're flicking it, and now you're like, you know, being so feminine. So half of it, so half of it might be in your head. So you have to power through that half, and you have to just be really, really confident and just assume that people will only see what you tell them to see. So if you tell them that you're super confident, and I know this sounds like wishful thinking, but it's true. If you tell them that you are the best startup at doing what you're doing by far, and your technology is by far the best, and the team you're hiring is by far the best, then they'll believe you because they don't know anything else. So yeah, so I would say you will encounter bad people, whether that's for gender reasons or race reasons or whatever. You can't avoid that, but you can avoid any sort of fear that you might have, or any sort of insecurity that you might have about being who you are, by just kind of powering through it.
So where do you draw courage in situations where you feel insecure or doubtful, or you experience gender bias?
In the moment, yeah, I think honestly you might feel like, in reality, you might feel not very courageous on the inside, but on the outside, you don't really have a choice. Like, you have to stand up for yourself. You're also often, I mean, if we're talking from an ultimate AI context, I'm often representing the company, as in I'm not just there as myself. I don't have the excuse of like being, like giving in this situation or letting someone make me feel bad. Like I have a responsibility to my team, or to the company or to the mission that we're trying to bring, to be really strong and to be really decisive. So I think, it's honestly just the sensation that you don't have any choice. You just have to do it.
And you are basically, you're part of the co-founding team, which is comprised of guys.
Yeah. How
How important is it, or how active are they in supporting you as a woman and having a balance of female-male leadership there?
Yeah, they're super, super supportive. I remember when we spoke about this as well on the phone, it was, I basically explained to you, the guys, they're from Finland. It's a Nordic company. They have way less gender biases than I do growing up in the UK, definitely. So there is a culture that I was lucky to come into, which was very kind of gender neutral, and they didn't really have the biases that I expected people to have. But then on top of that, they're just really nice, very humble people. And when you work with humble people, that they listen to you, and as long as you you put a lot of work into your thoughts and your research, and then what you want to say, what you're going to say is probably going to be really valuable. So they're grateful for your contribution.
And I asked Eva this, but I would love to hear what you say. If you could go back in time and talk to your 16-year-old self, what kind of advice would you give her?
Honestly, so similar to what Eva said, which is believe in yourself more, be more confident. And I would also say just don't worry. It will all work out. Don't stress so much, basically. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for the beautiful conversation.
Of course. Thank you.
And I will pass on the mic now to the audience. So who has questions over there?
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. So you've said a few times that you were very lucky to find yourself in the situation with a good group of talented technical people, I don't know, employers, whatever, a good group, a good team. But on the way, I mean, I'm sure that in investment banking, you were surrounded by maybe, a lot of ladders and so on after that. Do you have any advice for having difficult conversations, but confidently, without maybe taking things at a personal level? But how do you sort of overcome difficult situations in the workplace and then have those conversations that need to be had?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really hard question. I would say